Welcome into the Legislative Lounge this is Natebige, 𝗬𝗓𝗍𝗍, your host here for today. We also have Mike Bales on the line as your co-host. This is the first episode of the Legislative Lounge on Radio DaBang, and we welcome you guys in today. We want to give a big shout out to Mike Khan and Radio DaBang for inviting us on as a team to really bring to you, the audience, a larger perspective of our political realm on what's going on here today. Me and my buddy Mike have been working off the radio for quite a while in social media aspect and going through, the everyday political atmosphere of, what's coming out of Washington, what's coming out of the White House, what the information is that's being relayed and whether or not it's the truth. So we want to really welcome you guys in here today and as we move forward into today's show and through the future. We love for you guys to join us, and so that way we can give you guys a better perspective on what's coming out of the Capitol Hill, what's coming out of these executive orders through the new legislation and a plethora of different areas for the United States, and how it's going to affect you, and whether or not your representatives in Congress and throughout the states, especially here in Texas, whether or not they're telling you the truth. Because me and Mike, that's what we do, is we dive deep into these pieces of legislation in regards to, whether or not, whether or not the people that are pushing these bills, pushing these executive orders, are telling you the truth, the American people. And honestly, from what we've gathered and through our time on social media and just honestly going through these bills, we've been able to see that a lot of what they relay to the American people through the news and through, just the mouth of the people in Capitol Hill is not the truth a lot of times. And it doesn't matter if they have an R or a D next to their name at times, because a lot of times we see them trying to push narratives that aren't really going to, affect you on a daily basis. They're just going to line their own pockets. And honestly, we want to go through it on this show. What we're going to do is we're going to show you the ins and outs of the bills that are coming out. A lot of the questions that a lot of people really can't answer because they don't have the information, or that more than likely they can't read the pieces of legislation to the point where they're understanding it. Because when you read things like the Constitution or executive orders or even pieces of legislation coming out of Capitol Hill, you're not going to understand it unless you learn it from a legal perspective. Because in all reality, those pieces of legislation, those documents are written as a contract. So you have to read them as a legal document. And to do that, you need to have the understanding of legal jargon by having a Black's Law Dictionary and whatnot next to you guys. So a little bit about me. I started out on social media just, paying attention to the political realm of what's going on and not seeing a connection with some of the things that I was hearing through the news or through, the legislatures on Capitol Hill and what was actually being done. So me and my buddy Mike dived into these pieces of legislation and was like, something's not adding up here, because I'm reading it this way and this is what it says, but we're getting a whole entirely different message on the other side of things, right? And what we are going to do is really break that out to you. And we built our platform on social media. We have a YouTube channel. We are on TikTok. We're on, Rumble and all that other social media out there. And to be able to bring this message to people. And here today, we're going to go through several pieces of information just to give you guys perspective of whether or not, you're hearing the truth coming from the mouths of those that are supposed to be representing you. So my name, again, is Natebige, but also here in regards to my partner is Mike Bales. Mike, give us a little bit of a perspective on your end and why you started the Legislative Lounge with me.
I started out, I saw the disparities in what the news was portraying and what I was actually reading on Congress.gov. And you could read every piece of legislation ever conceived by Congress on Congress.gov, which is where I get most of my information, unless it's from WhiteHouse.gov or any type of .gov website. And you see a corresponding narrative between each side of the media, whether it's right-leaning or left-leaning, they're not going to give you the full picture unless you're going to read it yourself. And through social media, I was able to meet Nate, and we started putting our heads together and really comparing notes and coming to the same conclusions, especially when it comes to legislation, even stuff like immigration bills, these 1,000-page pieces of legislation that they are only giving you little key insights into and leaving out big issues with the bills overall. And so we started having a lot of fun with it and started expanding, and then we built a podcast. And then, thanks to the opportunities that were given to us, we were able to bring this to y'all. And I can't wait to move forward with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Another big shout out to, Mike Kahn, Justin Shiro, and Radio DaBang team all together, honestly, for bringing us on, because, we do have a lot of understanding of what's going on nowadays, because I know Mike himself is actually going to school for law, so, he can give a whole lot of perspective, and me, honestly, I'm just the loudmouth of the group, right? I'm willing to call out those on both sides in regards to whether or not they're doing their job, because in all reality, if they're not doing their job on Capitol Hill, then they need to be talked to. We need to either replace them or we need to get them on the right page in talking about it, because too many times do we see, people resorting to Google and resorting to these .orgs and .coms and these news sites to get their, their understanding of what's going on. And in all reality, they're lying to them 9 times out of 10. Because, a lot of people aren't familiar with things like the Patriot Act and the American, these bills that are coming out that are allowing the media to, honestly, it's when you read the bills, they're allowed to lie to you. They're able to propagate information to you that, isn't exactly true. And a lot of times we're seeing this throughout, reform in regards to the border, and when it comes to the immigration and a lot of these perspectives. Like, in all reality, there's this narrative out there that, especially the Trump administration, but Republicans in general, or the conservatives on another hand, is against immigration, which is just not true. There's no reality, there's no piece of legislation, there's no indication, even through spoken word, that people in this administration is against immigration. I mean, a lot of people have to realize, first of all, Donald Trump's wife is an immigrant. Like, the fact that you would sit here and say that Donald Trump is against legal immigration is just a farce, because in all reality, his very own spouse is somebody that was naturalized through the mediation of legal immigration. The same thing comes to mind for the family of the vice president's wife. Her family originated from Southeast Asia, right? She herself is an Indian descendant from Indian immigrants. Like, and it's so funny to me to see so many people out here just, blaming Trump or blaming J.D. Vance in regards to this whole narrative of, oh, they're just trying to get all the illegals out, and they're trying to get all the immigrants out, without the fact of understanding there's a difference between legal and illegal immigration. I mean, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a common narrative that's being pushed for the past, we'll say 4 years now, especially with the older immigration bills, and we know of 4 of them. And then you have the most recent actions taken by this administration 2 weeks in, and a lot of people don't understand that the executive orders, majority of them haven't taken into effect yet. Now, the deportation efforts, they have started day one, but those effects are not retroactive, which means they did not go before the executive orders were administered.
Right.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, in respect to that, there's a lot of nuances to the executive orders, especially when it comes to people that are, seeking asylum and all these other things, because that's the big thing of the left or the Democrats, is that, oh, these are asylum seekers, these are, people that are, running away from, prosecution from their country, when in all reality, when you actually look at the numbers that are being reported from, the DHS and, the Border Patrol, less than 2%. It was just over 2% of the total. I was looking at the numbers. There was about roughly in the month of August of 2023, there was just over 20,000 immigrants that were encountered at the border, the southern border. And in that time frame, when you do the math out, like let's just say there's an average of 200,000 immigrants per month for that year, right, of 2023, based off of the information coming from the Border Patrol and the DHS, right? That gives us about 2.4 million encounters, right? This is encounters where people actually, from our Border Patrol, were able to actually interact with them. So this isn't even those that aren't outside of that realm, right? Those that didn't come into contact with our Border Patrol or DHS and whatnot. So out of that 2.4 million, only 2.1% of them actually were even eligible for asylum based off the criteria. Now, there was just over 400 and I believe 25,000 individuals that even applied. So the question is where is that other 2 million? But yet this is the narrative that the Democrats and those on the left that keep pushing that, oh, they're asylum seekers. They're asylum seekers. It's like, if they really were, why is there only a fraction of them even applying for it, first of all? And even that, there's a very small percentage, because out of that 425,000 or whatever the exact number is, I know it's over 400,000, only 11% of them, of that 400,000, 11% of them even qualified and got the asylum status. So we're sitting out here pushing narratives that are just untrue.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that with the border bills. The first border bill was introduced to the 117th Congress, right when Joe Biden went into office. It was H.R. 709.
Right.
And they claimed that there was an asylum reform, but the bill itself had no fix for the people that were already here. Instead, they offered a blanket amnesty for those that were here, basically awarding citizenship to those pre-existing this bill.
Right. And just to put it in perspective, that bill, the very first bill that came in, I believe that was 2023, right? That bill came out.
That was February 21.
Oh, 21. That's correct. That was introduced by Republicans, right?
No, this one was introduced by Democrats in the 117th Congress, right when Joe Biden got into office.
That is correct. So when it came to that bill, there was a lot of nuances in regards to foreign aid packages and whatnot. However, the narrative from last year, right, all summer last year, we heard, oh, the Republicans shot down the border bill. They shot down the border bill. They don't actually care about, securing our border and whatnot. But in all reality, there was actually two bills that came out prior to that in 2023. One was H.R. 2, which was presented by Mario Diaz-Balart, and then it actually went to the Senate. It passed the House, right? It went through a vote on the House floor, passed, went to Chuck Schumer, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, and it's been sitting on his desk since May of 2023. And yet it was then reintroduced by our very own Ted Cruz here in the state of Texas, right, under Bill S. 2824, and it was the same bill, basically. It's a jargon-filled foreign aid package. It directly attacks, the information in regards to securing our border and making our nation safe from individuals that, might otherwise need to be, taken a look at, because we see all of these deportations going on right now, right? The large majority, they're roughly averaging at about 950 per day from what I've seen. The large majority of them are criminals. Outside of the fact that they broke the law of 8 USC 1325, which is when coming into America is illegal. When you look at that, all of them are, can be considered, breaking the law. But I'm talking about people that make violent crimes and whatnot. These are the individuals that you wouldn't want in your neighborhood, even if they were American.
That's 100% correct. And as far as Ted Cruz's bill and then HR 2, this is a single standalone bill, which is hard to find, hard to come by in Congress. Because when they introduce bills, usually it's multi-issue bills. Mm-hmm. But this was a single-issue bill, and it had specifically to do with strengthening our border, reallocating funds towards the border wall, getting rid of catch and release, doubling up on biometric scanning, and there was a lot of good things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like the Senate bill version that Ted Cruz reintroduced. It basically got dismissed.
Absolutely. I mean, when you go ahead.
When you look at the current efforts taken by this administration with deportation, they said in the very beginning, both President Trump and Tom Homan, the border czar, the main priority is the violent criminal element.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they're going to turn away from those that solely broke U.S. Code 1325, which covered illegal entry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, but it's the whole narrative that the Republicans or conservatives, depending on how you look at it, are against immigration in general. Like, I mean, in that the Democrats are these ominous saviors of the immigrants and whatnot. But when you take a look at these bills, like H.R. 2, right, it passed the House, right, but barely. It barely, because it won by 2 votes, right? You need 218 votes to pass any piece of legislation in the House of Representatives. It passed at 219. However, there was 213 Democrats that voted against it. Yet they pushed this narrative all last year in 2024 that, oh, we're trying to secure our border, but the Republicans, they shot down the bill that came out in, what was it, March of 2024? Yeah, these are the narratives that we're trying to fight.
That was a pure political move by the Biden administration because they realized during his campaign that the American people's one of their number one concern was immigration, was the unsecured border. And unfortunately, S-4361, which is that bill introduced
by Ted Cruz,
in 2024, it was a multi-issue bill that not just dealt with the border, but also dealt with funding Ukraine, Afghanistan, Israel, and that's why it failed. That's why it got no support from Republicans overall.
Right. And it's funny you talking about the military and foreign aid packages, whatnot. Mike, you being a veteran yourself. It's funny to see another narrative from the Democrat side of the aisle is that, and it's not so much the people inside of the Capitol, it's actually just people in general, in the general population, that are sitting there saying, oh, we spend too much on our military and all this other stuff. But at the same time, which is kind of ironic, they'll sit here and say, oh, no, we need to help our allies. We need these foreign packages. And it's like, where do you think that these foreign aid packages, where they're being funded from? The large majority of these foreign aid packages are funded through the military budget. Like when we're talking about Ukraine, we're talking about Denmark and all our other allies. The money that we send to all these other areas like our protectorates and our territories, and that comes from those. The majority of the time comes from that.
100%. And a lot of majority of the American people weren't happy with the overfunding of the Ukraine war and the complete dismissal of the issues that were going on in the homeland. And we saw an exponential rise in crime. We saw a complete dismissal of the border and an increase in the fentanyl crisis, which is just destroying our young people.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's just priorities, and the Democrat Party was just not meeting them.
Right. And I'm not saying that there aren't some Republicans that sided with these foreign aid packages, because there's definitely plenty of them. Like, I mean, for instance, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House himself, put forth a lot of these bills, or else they wouldn't have went through. So it's not, when it comes to the foreign aid packages, this is definitely a bipartisan issue that we need to address with a lot of the rhinos that we have in Congress, honestly, because it's like, you guys will sit here, you'll say that you're the champion of the American people, as a Republican, but yet you're not even focusing on them. Just recently, I looked at the numbers. It's well over $200 billion has went to Ukraine for this whole situation, right? Just think of what homelessness would look like here in America with $200 billion. Just think about what the VA, reforming the VA situation, since you're in your ex-military, Mike. What would the military VA look like with $200 billion extra in their pocket?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, they could divert that in a variety of different ways, whether it be actually hiring doctors and not relying on nurse practitioners and physician assistants. And you can hire claims workers, which a lot of people don't know. But due to the Biden's destructive policies pertaining to the immigration and the border, a lot of VA resources were diverted towards processing asylum claims. A lot of people don't know that.
And I know, Mike, you've been dealing with trying to get some looked at. Like, it took them a year to even get you in for your first schedule, right?
Yeah. So I still have an appeals claim waiting for a judge to look at. It's been waiting to be looked at since January of 2024.
Wow. This is a U.S. military, Army veteran that is sitting here waiting for just basic, mental and physical health assistance. But yet we have $200 billion to set aside for a country that has no interest in us. People sit there and be like, oh, they got natural gases, they got this, they got that for us. Well, yeah, we've got that too. And Donald Trump will make sure that we go back to being more energy independent in regards to that. But that was their whole entire basis of, wanting to fund Ukraine and that whole situation, and that Putin was this ultimate dictator. I don't care. When you're ignoring the issues here in America, especially with those that protect us, you're gonna have a huge issue with me. And I don't care if you got, like I say, I don't care if you have an R or a D next to your name. If your main focus is helping people outside of America before our own, we're gonna have an issue, because you got veterans out here. Mike, you told me about your back issue, from doing so many jumps in the military, being deployed yourself. So you are a combat veteran, and your back is so messed up that if it wasn't for your strong core and back muscles, you wouldn't even be able to walk because of how bad your spine is, right?
Yeah, that's what my doctor told me when he was looking at my MRI. I've told you I've got thoracic arthritis. I got multiple bulging discs, misalignment, nerve compression, sciatica. So,
and mind you,
I'm not the only one.
Yeah, and mind you, audience, Mike is 33 years old with these issues, right? A 33-year-old with all of these issues. It sounds like he should be like a 60, 70-year-old man. No offense to those, but like at 33 years old, you shouldn't have these issues. Or if you did and you fought for our country, right? You shouldn't have to wait years to get medical treatment and what needed to get you right. Right? We have so many veterans out here that are dealing with their physical, issues. And more than likely, more is their mental. It used to be 22 a day. I believe it's up to like 24 and a half a day now, right? That is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of Congress has more interest in lining their own pockets rather than taking care of the American people that they've been charged with the responsibility to represent.
Absolutely.
Our veterans. But back to the immigration topic.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a lot of fear surrounding children and ICE agents raiding schools. I'm sorry, ICE agents will never raid a school.
No. And I know that was a big thing, like with social media, big Democrat social media stars, I guess you could say, quote unquote, is that they were pushing this narrative that the ICE immigration went into a Chicago school. You want to go into that a little bit, Mike?
I don't remember that, but I do know that if ICE agents come to the school, they will wait at the front office and have a student called to them.
Right. So essentially what happened in Chicago is there was this big narrative. It was even on the news, but a lot of the social media, big, funded, stars, I guess you can call them, that have, agents and management agencies, they were pushing this narrative that, and it was all over the news itself. at first, and they had to recall it all, is the fact that they were saying that there was the ICE agents that went into a Chicago school to take a child out because of, everything, the misunderstanding of the executive order itself. However, it was less than a few hours later, they all had to come back and say, oh, we were wrong. It was actually the Secret Service that was going in to protect a child of interest, somebody in the government, no names were released, because of a threat that was being placed. Right, so it's these kind of narratives that we're trying to defeat. Because honestly, I was actually a little surprised that a lot of the big stars and social media and whatnot actually came back and put out. Sometimes they usually will come out and be like, oh, they'll try and twist it into their ways because they got writers. Believe it or not, these social media people are given scripts or they're given topics that they need to review, and they'll deny it till they're blue in the face. But in all reality, we've seen the group chats, we've seen the discords, we know what's going on behind the scenes. But it's those narratives.
I think this is an area where Republicans need to get a little better, and they need to start finding talent of their own on the right side of the political aisle, just like the Democrats. The Democrat Party has done a great job at targeting the youth and taking advantage of the left-wing political stars, if you will,
right,
on social media. And I think the Republican side needs to do the same. And I'm thankful that essentially Radio DaBang and Mike Kahn had kind of spearheaded that process.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I know that we're not even the only show. We've got, the Patriots Den on Thursday, so tune into that as well, because those are some great young guys there giving you their perspective on local things here in Texas. But, I mean, in regards to a lot of the misunderstandings, like, for instance, a lot of what's going on right now, the biggest thing is the confirmation hearings, right? And we keep seeing them over and over again. They're grilling RFK, they're grilling Tulsi Gabbard, they're grilling... Mr. Patel and all these other people, and they're just getting completely humiliated, honestly, on the Democratic side. Like, for instance, this is another issue that I have is, I don't know if it's whether or not the people in Senate are either too, unknowledgeable. I'm going to be nice since we are on a live show, or, instead of just blatantly calling them stupid, whether or not they're doing that, being just dumb, or are they really just trying to paint a narrative because they know all of America is working, watching them in regards to what's going on in these confirmation hearings? For example, Senator 𝗬🦧 out of New Mexico, right? I just did a video on social media on this that kind of blew up. He was questioning Robert Kennedy Jr. in regards to him being the Secretary of Health and Human Services, right? That is a branch that helps with the NIH, FDA, all those kind of things. People know basically what that is. They don't have any realm of like removing anything in regards to legislation or laws or funding of different programs or whatnot. But yet, Senator 𝗬🦧 out of New Mexico asked RFK if ordered by President Trump to eliminate or reduce or get rid of Medicare, Medicaid funding, would he do it? And RFK looked at him like, that's something you do as Congress. I don't do that. And and Senator 𝗬🦧 scoffed at him. It was like, oh, well, you know what? If you're not going to answer it, then, we're just going to move on. I was like, hold up. We're not just going to move past that, Senator 𝗬🦧. You just tried to gaslight all of America into thinking that the Secretary of Health and Human Services has power that he doesn't have. Because you're trying to paint this narrative that Republicans are trying to remove, funding for social programs like Medicare and Medicaid, and nowhere in there. And what they're doing is they're painting this narrative because something in Project 2025 alludes to something of those matters. And that is where the issue is gaslighting Americans into believing the nonsense of Project 2025 and believing that, the separation of powers aren't a reality.
The narrative surrounding Project 2025 has been going on for years, but a lot of people don't realize that Project 2025 has been the same since the 80s. It just takes on a different name every administration. For every single president, regardless of party President Obama was able to get Obamacare.
That's another big one. A lot of people don't know that. They'll push this narrative about Project 2025 being this ultra-conservative, only Republican-based thing. In all reality, it's been presented to every, presidential candidate, whether that's the Green Party or the Libertarians. They're all getting it too, and they don't want to talk about that. The idea behind Obamacare or the ACA, it comes from Project 2025 back in 2012 when they presented it to Obama.
Yes, it's created by the Heritage Foundation every presidential cycle, and it's given to each administration, and then each administration may or may not take ideas from it. And we like I said prior, we saw that in Obama's administration.
Right. And just to defeat that narrative, they lean more conservative, so people will consider them a conservative think tank, but that's all they are. They're a nonpartisan conservative think tank. And in all reality, a lot of people like to, inflate the fact that, Republican means conservative or conservative means Republican. That's false. And that's another thing being pushed by the left is that, conservatism and republicanism, they're not synonymous. Do they go hand in hand? Typically, sure, because conserving the values and morals and beliefs of our founding documentation, that's what conservatism is. It's understanding that. But it gets confused with this, neo-Christian, Republican type base. But in all reality, there are conservative Democrats out there, and there have been in the past.
100%. I do want to touch on the RFK thing.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of things that came out of his confirmation hearing, and he called out the Democrat side of that party, which he used to belong to, but they basically cast him out once he started showing support for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But Bernie Sanders, who's a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist, he asked RFK, would he take any money from Big Pharma? And, RFK was kind of taken aback. He's like, me? Bernie, you were the top recipient of pharmaceutical money, almost $1.5 million.
Yep. Well,
during his presidential campaign.
Yeah, his several times that he's ran for president as well. I mean, this is the thing that I don't understand about people like Bernie Sanders and just, congressional members in general is that you guys do know that this information is public record, right? It's on the FEC.gov website. For those that, are listening in the audience, you can verify where money's coming from, where money's going, how it's being allocated, when it's being allocated, how much is being allocated by going to FEC.gov. That's FrankEdwardCharles.gov. Any candidate that's filed to run at any federal position, it will be filed there. If not, it's illegal. So the fact that he's sitting here saying his caveat to saying that is like he was and this is where it becomes gaslighting, because the fact that they're saying particular words, Mike, to get this narrative that he isn't. He said, I didn't receive a single dime from any pharmaceutical pack. See, that's that caveat, is people don't understand the difference. It's like, yeah, but you received millions upon millions of dollars from medical professionals individually. It's a great way to get around saying that, because you can tell your donors, hey, donate to me individually, so that way it looks a little bit better on my end. And I'm not saying Republicans don't do this at times too, because there's plenty of rhinos out there that'll definitely do those kind of things. But it's one of those things that you have dirty money, and that's why you push certain issues. There's lobbyists and there's special interest groups that donate to these individuals' candidate, in their campaign for either president or re-election to Senate, in Bernie's case. And you see it all time and time again, using particular words to get the American people to believe that, they're the good guy.
Yeah, 100%. If we can go back to the immigration thing, that's one of the bigger topics, especially when it's concerning the topic that kind of aligns with it, birthright citizenship. That's another hot topic right now.
Right.
There was an executive order done by the Trump administration recently concerning birthright citizenship. And basically, the executive order says that if a child is born here, at least one of the parents has to be an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, historically, there have only been 2 cases concerning citizenship in this country. One of them being Dred Scott, where he argued for federal citizenship, which isn't a thing.
No.
And then there was USB 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗧𝗧, which a lot of people like to use that and conflate it with illegal alien and giving illegal aliens the right to have children and their children being considered American citizens, but that's not what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Those Chinese immigrants, they were actually here legally. They were actually legal residents of this country. They were prior Chinese nationalists,
Mm-hmm.
but the left's not telling you that. The Democrats aren't telling you that.
Right.
And another thing they're not telling you is if foreign diplomats have a child on U.S. soil, that child is not an American citizen. So the 14th Amendment, there's an "and" in that section 1.
Mm-hmm. You know, a lot
born and falls under the jurisdiction.
Right, and I know a lot of people are using the 14th Amendment in such a misconstrued way. I said at the beginning of the show that a lot of people, when you read these documents, you have to read them correctly. You can't read the Constitution or pieces of legislation like everyday conversation verbiage, because that's not how it's written. It's written with legal definitions, right? And we'll get into this in later shows, but you know, a lot of people will say when a person's born and naturalized in the United States is the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, right? But the problem is you need to know the difference between person and persons in the legal definition. And that can be given to you in any legal dictionary, but the one that we go to the most, me and Mike, is Black's Law Dictionary.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the Constitution, you have to go back to the original drafters of each amendment and what their intentions were. And concerning the 14th Amendment and citizenship, they were not concerned with foreign diplomats. They were not concerned with illegal aliens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to do your research and understand the terminology behind it.
Absolutely. And I mean, so it's funny that people want to get out here. They want to talk about, you know, we see it on social media debates and all that all the time. They get out here and they talk about the 14th Amendment. They talk about the Constitution or legislation in general, just in an area that, you know, it's just ignorant to them because they don't know how to read it. The problem is, but the reality is the Constitution is actually written at an 8th grade reading level. The problem is that most Americans between the ages of 17 and 65 read below a 6th grade reading comprehension level here in America. And I've said that on the Chris Easley show before when I was hosting, and it's just astounding to me that we're not teaching our children how to read these documents. And I think it's intentional, honestly, so that way we can get as an adult and we don't understand what these legislatures are telling us when they say things. They propagate information like, oh, the Republicans, they're the bad guys of the veterans, or, you know, the Democrats. You know, they're just both sides. They're pointing fingers, trying to paint this narrative to people that really aren't understanding the legislation that are coming out to them in the first place, which is why we created the Legislative Lounge. Me and Mike basically will read these bills for you because we know how to. We've been doing it for several years now. Are we perfect? Do we miss things? Absolutely. We're no legal scholars yet, but we do read above an 8th grade reading level, though.
100%. And when you really start to see the increase in illiteracy since 1979 and the inception of the Department of Education, prior to 1979, the illiteracy rate was less than 4%. Now we're in 2025, and 21% of the population of the United States does not possess the ability to read or write. And then you have 65% of the United States possesses a below 6th grade reading comprehension level.
That's just
and
wild.
by design.
I mean, to put that in perspective, get in a room with you and 4 other people. That means one of you can't read above a 6th grade reading level in most cases.
Like actually, 21%. That means 1 out of every 5 Americans can't read or write.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And then we expect them to get out here and have conversations about, what these people on Capitol Hill are doing. And in all reality, you have to understand, most of the people on Capitol Hill, not all of them, most of them have legal backgrounds. So they know how to word things to make the American people believe something that might not be true.
It's like doing a college paper and you're fluffing the essay. That's what they're doing. It's like a word salad approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and in all reality, there's a lot of people that, when you look at the right does it too. They'll answer something without answering it, if you know what I mean. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, why don't the Republicans just say that Donald Trump lost the 2020? It's like, they did, just not the way you wanted them to do. I mean, so it can go for both sides, honestly. But in all reality, it's the narratives that are just being pushed by the Democrats and the left just keep coming and keep coming. Like, for instance, like during the RFK initiative, or confirmation, I should say, Elizabeth Warren is another individual that I call out on a regular basis, just because, she is a strong advocate for medical research into vaccines and all this. And you have to sit here and ask, why would she go after RFK so heavily for, she was questioning him on whether or not he was going to involve himself financially in lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers and whatnot, because RFK is a strong advocate against vaccines, which I respect, and I am as well. But in all reality, it's because of what change has happened over the several decades with vaccines and how they're manufactured, the ingredients of them. But she asked him, are you going to be involved in this? And he blatantly answered it. It wasn't a no or a yes. It was, I'm going to follow all the ethical guidelines as the Secretary of Health. Like, that's a better answer to me than yes or no, honestly. I know a lot of people say, well, that just gives wiggle room for him. But the thing is you have to look at who's asking the question. Because when you look into Elizabeth Warren and you really break down, she's actually quite smart in how she does it. Because I looked into her a little bit myself, and a lot of people have problems with people in Congress because of, insider trading and whatnot, right? There's apps to follow these. Like, for instance, one of the biggest names out there in regards to insider trading is Nancy Pelosi. And this is for the audience. Go onto those apps. If you see Nancy Pelosi buying a stock, buy it immediately. That's just a side note. But she's very intelligent, Elizabeth Warren, in the sense that she doesn't own any stock. But when you take a look into her donors and you see who's donating to her campaigns year over year and how much you start to see a trend that's very interesting. You start to see her top, 15 or 20 that I looked at, more than 3/4 of them were either schools or medical groups that do deep dive research or have federal grants into vaccine manufacturing. And that's where you see her fighting so hard, because if you actually watch that confirmation, she was screaming, getting red in the face over this. And now you understand why. It's because the people that invest into her campaign are the people she's fighting for. It's special interest groups. It's special medical, background people that are investing directly into her, so that way she can get into office and advocate for them. These are the type of people you have to look into.
Yeah, because a good campaign is a well-financed campaign. And if you look up the top 5 people that are financed by Big Pharma, Bernie was number 1, and Elizabeth is in that top 5. I believe she might even be number 2 or 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought she was number 2, but she might be number 3 now. I'm thinking of somebody else.
No, but it has to do with these non-answers is a disingenuous way of protecting one's base and financiers.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you see, don't get me wrong. We're not saying this isn't on the right. It's just the narratives that keep getting pushed on how they're pushing it from the left is what we're trying to combat. Is the fact that people need to look into what is actually pushing these people on Capitol Hill, because they're pushing out information in these bills that aren't going to affect you. Now, I will always stand by the fact, I know Mike will always stand by the fact that, we are more focused on federal things, but we definitely pay attention to local, and we advocate for that. If you're listening to this show today, pay attention to who is on your local level, honestly, because that is actually going to affect you more directly than it is at the federal level, because the federal level is the bare minimum. Is any piece of legislation that goes into effect it's going to take at least a year, if not 2 to 4 years is the average span time of when some piece of legislation is going to affect you. So take a look at your local, like here in Texas, right? We can look at it from a broader, more so we're here in Houston, but look at it from the Texas House. A lot of times you'll see Texas on the side of having more Republicans in the state Congress, but yet you got a lot of rhinos on our state legislature that are putting people into places like committee chairs. That's allowing them to kill bills on a consistent basis. And a lot of the base grassroots people here in Texas started to catch on to that, because they were making deals here in the state of Texas, so that way that the Republicans can look like the good guys but they're the ones putting them in these chair positions, so that way they can point the finger at them and say, hey, they're doing this, but all the while having backdoor deals in the background. And yet when the grassroots came up and said, hey, y'all need to stop this or we're going to get you out of office, they're like, okay. And what they did is basically they moved them from chair to subcommittees chairs. So it's almost as if they went from having power to even more power in the end of it, when you look at what they're able to do as the subcommittee chairs and how they can kill bills even faster now. So
yeah,
take a look
100%.
At your local.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is what happened a week ago when the Texas House banned Democrats from committee chairships in the 89th session, and basically just placed them into vice chairs.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that is the rules are a little ambiguous, and being in the vice chairs means they can hold meetings at any time they want.
And they're actually the ones that look through bills initially and suggest them to the committee chairs, so that way they can be voted on. It's the same thing at a federal level. On how this process works. So it goes to the committee chair, and the committee chair makes a decision on whether or not the committee will actually review it and push it to the floor for a vote. But the problem is that those subcommittee chairs, or the vice chairs, they can kill it before it even gets to that point. So they went from being the chair to the vice chair, and they can kill it before it even gets to the chair.
Not even that. They could just clog up the calendar.
That too. So
they can just stall any type of forward progression for the state of Texas.
Right. All right. And that's why we say, we focus a lot on federal things, because there's a lot of issues at the federal level that we want you guys to be aware of, because a lot of people don't know how to read these documents, and that's no slight at anybody. It isn't. It took us several, and we're not perfect at it at all. Like I said before, we're no legal scholars and whatnot yet. But when it comes to understanding even at your local level, that's something that you guys really need to start to pay attention to as well, because what's going to happen at the local levels, yeah, we give you the state, but even in your local community, right? In your town, in your county, who's your tax assessor? Who's your mayor? Who's your sheriff? Who are the people that are affecting your everyday? Pay attention to those things as well as the federal, if not more so, I would say, at that local level here in the Houston area. Pay attention. We've got people in the sheriff's position and in the city tax assessor's position in Fort Bend County that have criminal indictments on them right now. Multiple. And yet these people were just reelected a couple months ago. But people, to bring this back into a bigger broad, people are complaining about Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump, oh, he's a felon, he's a this, he's a that. When you're literally voting for people who are also have criminal indictments against the federal criminal indictments in your own county. These are why I'm saying pay attention to who you're voting to at all levels. When you go into the voter booth every 4 years, don't just look at who's the president or who's running for senator. Go down ballot and look at everybody.
Yep, every 2 years, every 4 years. Actually, it's a family process for me and my wife. Every few years, we research everyone, regardless of political affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the senator to to the president, vice president, down to the judges. We research everybody,
right?
Because it's about protecting yourself and your neighbor.
Absolutely. And also, I'm like, here in Fort Bend County, right, in Harris County, we have elections coming up in May. You have early voting registration that ends at the beginning of April. You have early voting, I believe it's April 22nd through the 29th. You should know who's running for school boards. You should know who's running for mayor, because there's a couple of elections, like the mayor. Just last week, I was on the Chris Easley show interviewing somebody that's running for Fort Bend ISD, Angela Collins, and then also we have a candidate that was running for Sugarland mayor. You should know who these people are and what they stand for, because that's what's going to affect you on a daily basis. Me and Mike, we're going to give you a federal perspective, because we definitely think that there needs to be a little bit more of that as well. But we're also going to toss in there what's going on here in Houston and in the surrounding areas. So, and Mike being over in Arizona as well, we'll also hopefully expand out to that way, so that way we can get a little bit more understanding of what's going on over in Arizona.
For me, I like to touch on every state of interest,
Mm-hmm.
from the West Coast to the East Coast, anything that I particularly find interesting, especially my home state of Arizona. I also take very big interest in Texas because, my best friend's there. And I love the American people. I served the American people for almost 12 years, and I'll continue doing so in this capacity.
Right. And I mean, just perspective. We won't just look at the federal. We'll look at other states as well. We have friends from all over the country, right? I mean, over in the state of Washington, there are so many things going on over there that here in Texas would make us cringe. They're telling us about the sheriffs. They're telling us about, some of the pieces of legislation they're trying to pass and take their constitutional rights away. It's crazy out there, guys. So pay attention on what's going on. But to wrap this up, guys, we thank you guys for all coming in and joining us on Legislative Lounge. We want to, again, thank Radio DaBang and Mike Kahn for allowing us to come on here and really give our perspective to you, the audience, and help you guys understand where we're coming from and what is actually being said from your representatives.
100%. And do follow us on the multiple platforms of social media that's offered. Tune into us on Radio DaBang in the future, and watch us on YouTube and TikTok and whatever social media application you have available to you.
Absolutely.
And interact with us. That way we can bring you what you're interested in as well.
Right, and hopefully we can expand this and get people, from state and federal to come in and, give their perspective, and we can really, honestly ask them questions, so that way we can bring a broader view to you guys, a better understanding of what's going on. But again, follow us on the Legislative Lounge. Me and Mike hold a podcast on Mondays as well, on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Go follow us on there. But also follow Radio DaBang on Facebook and all sorts of social media. I know they're on YouTube and Rumble as well, so go follow them there. But again, thank you guys for tuning in to the first episode of the Legislative Lounge. Tune in next week. We will be here every Saturday at noon Central Time. So tune in with us, and we thank you guys for coming in. You guys have a good day.